Welcome to the human workforce. I'm Simon Carver, and if you've landed here because AI feels exciting, confusing, overhyped, or maybe just a little bit personal, you are very much in the right place. This show is about work, yes, but not only work in the narrow sense of jobs and titles and org charts. It's also about purpose, about identity, about what stays human when the tools around us get faster, smarter, and a bit harder to ignore.
And I'm Lachlan, which sounds very polished, until I remind you I'd happily record half this thing from a shed next to a half-fixed trail bike. But that's kind of the point, right? Real life, real work, real people trying to make sense of a pretty wild shift. The big question hanging over all of this is dead simple. How do people stay valuable in an AI-shaped economy?
That question can sound cold if you phrase it badly, like we're all lining up to be measured against a machine. I don't think that's the most useful way to see it. The source material behind this series keeps coming back to a more hopeful idea. AI isn't replacing you, it's becoming your teammate. Now, that teammate might be brilliant, strange, inconsistent, occasionally overconfident, honestly, a little like some people I've worked with in improv. But the point is partnership, not erasure.
Yeah, and that lands for me, because a lot of the chat out there is either full doomsday, like, that's it, pack it up, humans are cooked, or it's the opposite, all shiny buzzwords and chest beating. Neither helps when you're just trying to figure out what this means for your job on Monday morning. This show's not here to spook you, and it's not here to sell you magic beans either.
Exactly. We want to open the door to a conversation that feels honest. The human workforce, as an idea, says something important right away. Your edge in this next era may not be speed alone, or efficiency alone, or producing more in less time. It may be the qualities AI can't simply inherit because it processed enough data. Judgment, ethics, empathy, courage, taste, restraint, imagination, the ability to understand another person when the answer isn't obvious.
And maybe the ability to know when a neat-looking answer is actually a dodgy one. That matters too. Because if AI becomes part of the team, then the human bit of the team has got to get clearer, not blurrier. What do we decide? What do we own? What do we refuse? What do we get freed up to do better?
So if you're listening as a leader, a manager, a freelancer, a student, someone mid-career, someone feeling stuck, someone curious, someone skeptical, welcome. This series is for people who want to thrive in the age of AI without losing the thread of what makes work meaningful in the first place.
That's it. Pull up a chair. Or chuck the headphones in on the train, on a walk, in the workshop, wherever. We're going to keep this grounded, practical, and human. No need to panic, no need to pretend everything's settled either. We can puzzle through it together. So why does this conversation matter now? Well, because this stuff is moving faster than heaps of people expected. Not in some abstract sci-fi flying cars way, in normal workplaces. Finance teams, managers, analysts, customer support, creatives, ops. The tools are showing up, and they're not just doing tiny admin tricks anymore.
One of the examples from the source material really stuck with me. In finance, there are institutions dealing with something like 800 billion transactions a year. That number is so large, it almost stops meaning anything, like trying to count raindrops in a storm. In that environment, the old model was often reactive. Humans had to hunt for the one suspicious signal in a mountain of noise.
Yeah, needle in a haystack stuff. Brutal work, honestly. Then this example introduces an agentic AI system, a sentinel, that reasons through transaction context in real time, in milliseconds. It scans billions of data points, builds what they call a neighborhood of behavior, and predicts whether something's legit with 3 times the accuracy of previous models. Plus, it cuts false positives by more than 20%. That's not a tiny productivity bump. That changes the shape of the job.
And here's the part I find encouraging. The human role doesn't vanish in that story. It evolves. The analysts aren't buried in spreadsheets doing endless border patrol. They become risk architects. They look for new fraud patterns, emerging threats, deepfake scams the system hasn't seen before. In other words, the machine does the heavy lifting at scale, and the human brings strategic judgment, ethical oversight, and creative problem solving.
That's the bit people feel in their gut, though, isn't it? Even when the outcome sounds positive, there's still a wobble. If the tool gets better at the repetitive bits, then who am I in the workflow? What happens to the skills I built my career on? If I've spent years being the person who catches the thing, what happens when the machine catches most of the thing first?
Yes, that anxiety is not irrational. Work isn't just income. It's structure, confidence, belonging, status, momentum, sometimes even a story we tell ourselves about who we are. So when automation shifts the task, it can also shake identity. I think many people are asking two questions at once. Will my job change? And the quieter one, will I still matter?
And if you're asking that, fair enough. You're not behind. You're not broken. You're not some drongo for feeling weird about it. The source we're working from pushes back on fear a bit. It says automation can free us from meaningless jobs and open the door to more purposeful work. Now, that doesn't mean the transition is easy, but it does mean there's another way to read the moment besides doom.
Right. This series won't be about hype for hype's sake. We're not here to chant slogans about disruption and call it wisdom. We're here to ask practical questions. What should people learn? What should leaders protect? Where does efficiency help and where does it distort? How do we adapt without flattening everything human into a dashboard metric?
And maybe most importantly, if AI can take the robotic out of the job, what kind of work is left for us? And how do we make that work better, fairer, and more worth doing?
So let's talk about what you can expect from this podcast. We're going to explore the practical side of adaptation: skills, decision-making, leadership, ethics, and the sometimes messy business of changing how we work without losing ourselves in the process. Some episodes will be very concrete. What abilities become more valuable when AI handles more routine tasks? How do you build judgment instead of just speed? How do teams actually work with AI as a teammate rather than treating it like an oracle?
And we'll keep one boot in the real world the whole time. Because adaptation can sound fancy till you're the one rewriting your role, training your team, or trying to explain to your boss why human oversight still matters. We'll get into leadership too, what leaders owe people when tools change fast, and how not to turn every workplace into a weird little panic room.
We'll also spend time on ethics, because this conversation gets shallow very quickly without it. If AI can scale decisions, then errors, blind spots, and bad incentives can scale too. Humans still have to ask, is this fair? Is this safe? Is this accountable? And who carries responsibility when something goes wrong? That isn't a side topic, it's central.
Yep, if a machine gives you a polished answer, someone still has to decide whether that answer should be used. That's where the human edge comes in. Not just creativity, though that matters, but restraint, context, empathy, all the squishy bits that turn out not to be squishy at all when the stakes get real. It's a bit like having a ridiculously powerful motor on an old bike. Great, love that. But if the steering's shot, you're still headed for the fence.
That is both charming and alarmingly vivid. And that balance between strategy and humanity is really the heart of our perspective here. We're interested in the upside of AI, but we're not willing to talk about the future of work as if people are just interchangeable components in a faster system. The source material says the most valuable skill won't be speed or efficiency alone, but humanity. I think that's the tension worth staying with.
Same. We're going to look at resilience too, not the cheesy just work harder and smile version. I mean the real stuff. Learning, adjusting, staying useful, staying curious, and maybe even finding better work on the other side of change. If 44% of finance teams are expected to use agentic AI by 2026, as the source says, then this isn't a niche conversation for techies in black turtlenecks. It's broad, it's practical, it's already here.
So consider this our invitation. Bring your hope, your skepticism, your questions, your career worries, your half-formed ideas. Bring the messy parts too. We don't need perfect certainty to begin. We just need a willingness to think clearly and stay human while the ground shifts a little.
Too right. We're glad you're here at the start of it. There's a lot to unpack and plenty ahead. Skills, leadership, ethics, adaptation, All of it. Simon, I reckon that's a pretty decent place to leave the opener.
I think so too. Thanks for joining us for this first conversation on the human workforce.
We'll catch you next time. Take care, Simon.
You too, Lachlan. Bye, everyone.